Okay, good morning. I've got 9:31. We have a little technical difficulty. We'll start our Monday, August 31st, 2026 Commissioners Court. Commissioner Dewey leads the pledges. Commissioner Armstrong the invocation.
First to our great nation, I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
To our great state,
honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
Lord, we just thank you, Father, for this day that you have made. Lord, we pray that you would guide us today as we thank you for that we were born in America, that we can live here in the state of Texas, in the great county of Galveston County. God, we just thank you that you guide us and as we approve voting locations today, Father, and approve a tax rate for our county, Father, that we'd have wisdom, that you'd guide us, and that, Father, we make good decisions for our county employees, our residents, and those in surrounding communities. Father, we thank you. We give you praise and ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Next up is public comment. I did not have anyone sign up for public comment. Anyone wishing to address Commissioners Court, the public comment section. Listen here, so items 1 through 48 are on consent.
What moving revenue rate items are on consent?
No.
Okay. Sure. Comments.
No, it's an action. It's the first action item. I'm not showing anything. Is that? I believe we have a motion. Yeah, motion and a second for the consent item. That motion passes 5-0. Brings us to item 49, consideration for Commissioners Court to propose a tax rate as required by Senate Bill 2. I'm proposing a tax rate of 0.32468 per $100 of evaluation, which is the no new revenue tax rate. Is that something we have to vote on? I think we do. I have a motion and a second to propose that tax rate, which is not the adoption of the tax rate, just proposing giving the public advance.
What's that rate again? I'm sorry.
0.324068 per $100.
Thank you.
That motion passes 5-0. 50, purchasing consideration to award RFQ 26-105, auditing and related services.
Good morning. Bids for RFQ 26-105 auditing and related services were opened on August 6, 2026. Seven bids were received after a thorough review from the evaluation committee. Portillo, Brown, and Hill was deemed to have the best compensation and is recommended for award. Your consideration and approval is your recommendation is requested.
Have a motion and a second to approve as recommended by purchasing. That motion passes 5-0. Brings us to right-of-way 51, receive public comment on Lettuce Acres replat. Open public comment period at 9:35. Anyone wishing to address Commissioners Court on the Lettuce Acres replat? Seeing and hearing none, we'll close public comment at 9:35. 52, consideration of unconditional approval with conditions, or disapprove of Lettuce Acres replat.
Good morning. We recommend unconditional approval.
Make a motion to unconditionally approve the Lettuce Acres replat. And a second. Motion passes 5-0. General Counsel, break into executive session. Executive session, Texas Government Code, Section 551.071, consultation with attorney. Commissioners Court will enter into executive session. Ask President of Texas Open Meetings Act, Chapter 551 of Texas Government Code, pursuant to Section 551.070 of the Government Code, to seek the advice of its attorney about pending or contemplated litigation, settlement, offer, or on a matter in which the duty of the attorney of the county of Texas disciplinary rules of professional conduct of the State Bar of Texas clearly conflicts with the Open Meetings Act relating to each of the following items. Demand received from April Waters, 322 CB 0057, Honorable Terry Pettaway et al. Versus Galveston County et al. in the United States District Court for the Southern District of Texas, Galveston Division. Also, executive session, Texas Government Code, Section 551.074, personnel matters. Commissioners Court will enter into executive session as permitted under the Open Meetings Act, Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code, pursuant to Section 551.074. of the Texas Government Code of Personnel Matters to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, or assignment duties, disciplinary dismissal of a public officer or employee, specifically Chief Financial Officer, Chief Information Officer, Chief Public Defender, County Engineer, Director of Facilities, Director of Grants Administration, Director of Human Resources, Director of Parks and Cultural Services, Director of Personal Bond Collections, Director of Road and Bridge, Mosquito Control Manager.
We'll go ahead and turn to page number 3. So we have additional personal items for the court's consideration. We just recently received a notification from a granting agency that there has been a granting reduction significantly, over $230,000 for the congregate meals and transportation. And in order to maximize the meals served to the seniors, there has to be some personal adjustments. Those are personal positions 1 to 6 regarding the senior citizens program.
Okay.
Then we have items 7 and 8, that is for the county clerk selections. There is a request to increase the hourly rate from $12 to $14 for election workers, and for election judges from 12 to 16. That the recommendation is currently just subject to utilizing the contract election funds. That way they can maintain that fiscal impact, which is about $350,000.
Okay.
The next one is Road and Bridge number 9. That's a reclassification from a mechanic 2 to a shop foreman. There is a fiscal impact of about $11,000, and Human Resources has revised this as well, and is recommending the support as well as our office. And lastly, 10 to 13 is pre-communication officers creations from the Sheriff's Office. Those communications officers will support operations within the department, but there is also an opportunity to receive some revenue from those entities that we support.
Sheriff Bowman is working with some of the municipalities and unincorporated areas where there's a taxing jurisdiction, like an emergency services district, to help absorb and pay for their fair share of the cost.
Yes, so said another way, we've been providing free dispatching services for taxing entities for years and years.
According to what is Sheriff Bowman still here?
I don't see it.
Yeah, according to what I was told by the sheriff's office, the county has been doing dispatch for over 13 different taxing entities around the county for years. And he has identified shortages on staffing in that, and he helped reduce the amount of overtime being burned and to not have staff burn out for positions. And he's going out and working with these entities to develop an interlocal for them to reimburse us for their fair share of cost, whatever. So with that said, again, this is jurisdictions that are under a municipality or under a taxing jurisdiction for emergency services like ESD 1 and 2. And it's not, from my discussion with the sheriff, it's not to include fire stations
Volunteer
that are
fire lines,
in
right.
unincorporated county that have no special tax whatsoever. So for example, Bay Cliff, San Leon, no ESD, no municipality, they would not be subject to having to put money into or paying for these calls for service.
Okay.
Sounds good. Then we'll go ahead and move to page 6. All of those are the vehicle requests that were presented on the renewal packet. These have been revised by Fleet Administration, and there's recommendations on all of them on the last column. I did want to highlight some changes that were part of the discussion on page 10. Item number 33. There is a vehicle transfer request from Juvenile Justice. It is a vehicle where we're going to be utilizing one of the surplus vehicles to accommodate for those needs from the department. They were able to provide additional justification to Fleet Administration, where they...
That's something that Judge Robinson kind of negotiated, right?
Yeah, I think they asked for a new vehicle, and we were able to negotiate giving them something that had the partition in the back that would protect the probation officer or the juvenile.
And then on page number 12, 56, there was 5 new vehicle requests from the district attorney's officers. 2 of those, 56 and 57, are going to be vehicle transfer requests, utilizing some of the vehicles that we're going to be surplus from the sheriff's office to assist in the operations for the public integrity chief and the vehicular chief. And on page 13, we have 58, 59, and 60. Those are just subject to the district office utilizing their procedure funds to pay for those costs of the vehicle. In total, the fiscal impact will be 1.2 out of 1101. It's only $640,000.
So they're using their forfeit funds to buy these vehicles, but they are buying vehicles that we already maintain, right? So it's not a,
So they're gonna be buying vehicles and retrofitting them, but based on the usage that they shared with us, I think these vehicles will have a little extended lifetime than the average fleet vehicle in the county, so I don't think it needs to be on the same county fleet program rotation of 4 years or was it?
No, I'm sorry, I don't want them to have something different than what we have, where they go buy different oil filters and different fuel.
Yeah, no, they'll be the same. So we will, the agreement was, our proposal to the court is that they use their forfeiture funds to purchase the vehicle, retrofit the vehicle with whatever special equipment they need. We will put it on the county's maintenance system with Road Bridge Fleet and to do the oil changes. Any major issues that come up with the vehicle, let's say they damage it and it's total, they will have to then find to replace it. The county will not be replacing it with tax dollars.
And they will be in alignment with the recommendation from the, for the other vehicles.
That's how we're treating the sheriff's office and the vehicles they acquire. Is we do routine maintenance, which we can do, which is a cost that's already baked into our budget theoretically, but any major issues, they have to find funding to make the repair or replacement.
Okay.
Okay, question on number one. See Dwight right there. Is this getting the vehicle that he's been looking for?
So this will be a transfer of a vehicle, but yes, it will be for the electric transportation. There is additional vehicle request from county clerks on page,
We discussed it maybe purchasing from one of his dedicated accounts. Which page was it?
yes, it's page 10, Commissioner, number 31 and 32. Those were the new vehicle requests at this point. After the data administration reviewing the request, that is recommended right now. Unless they want to utilize their funds, and that's definitely to the discretion.
I couldn't really hear what your question was back there, I'm sorry.
I just was wondering if this was getting you the vehicles that you were requesting. You and I discussed you using your dedicated funds for,
Absolutely, so I think the question is, am I okay with putting the request in the dedicated funds, is that correct? You're asking me?
I guess.
I haven't seen that, I'm sorry.
And so the recommendation, Dwight, on the fleet deal here is to pay for out of the general fund is a recommendation no, unless you want to use your dedicated election fund to pay for the vehicles.
Except for the first one, which is a transfer, we'll give you a transfer.
Okay, yeah, absolutely, I'm okay with using the dedicated funds for that, that's an allowable expense.
Okay.
So you can shift that request to the election.
Okay.
There's also a recommendation, Dwight, in here that says, depending on the utilization, and maybe you can speak to it, recommended that maybe also utilizing a rental agreement to rent them as you need them. Would that be less,
We have been,
cost? Right?
we have been, actually, a couple of years back, we had requested a budget amendment to purchase a box truck. We didn't have that approved by the commissioners. We did not purchase the box truck, so we have been utilizing a rental agreement with a substantial discount through Enterprise Rental Car for a box truck.
Okay.
Now, the vehicles are different use for that. And if you want to hear why, I can explain that, but that's a totally different use to that.
The box truck is to move the election machines around?
Correct. Pick them up, deliver, all that stuff,
Right.
services. And we just rent them for usually a week at a time, drop off, take the truck back. So there's a substantial savings, maybe not over time, but in the meantime, we're saving substantial money.
I guess budget, if you don't mind, just working with them on, if it's out of your dedicated fund, I'm supportive and would like to see you get what you need. So,
For the vehicles.
The vehicle. Thank you. If I can, I did hear something from the back briefly about the request to have poll workers and judges pay increase.
we're recommending yes.
I appreciate that. I will point out though, I'm a little, I didn't hear what you all said from back. I'm sorry, but I did hear that, are we paying for that out of general fund or are we proposing something different?
Out of your discretionary funds.
The additional.
So that's a little gray area there. So the discretionary funds according to chapter 31.100 states that the county commissioners cannot utilize or suggest the use of those funds to offset regular budget of the county. So we have to take a closer look at that.
Then the recommendation at this point, there will be no, because the county cannot absorb those costs. I mean, there is a budget under line item for seasonal help that hasn't been utilized for that. So obviously, we can definitely further review it.
Okay.
But if it's after from 1101, the recommendation will be.
So my understanding is the commissioners cannot recommend that. It has to come from the election
I mean,
office.
we do have a budget of 700,000 for election expense, and they request 500,000 increase for that in order to absorb this, which we financially cannot sustain at this point.
Yeah, Dwight, I get what you're saying based on the statute, that the court cannot recommend or direct the funds to be expended out of that account. That has to come in your direction. Okay, so I think what the budget office here then is recommending is from the general fund that the court deny the request, and you can see what happens. Goes from there.
So we're paying the $12 an hour currently out of general fund? So if we wanted to do the $16 and $14 an hour, we cannot do it through our budget currently, just the way, how much revenue and expenses we have. But if the clerk was wanting to do that, he could do it from his fund.
Correct.
Okay.
That will be up to the
And for
discretion.
clarity, I would like to work with you on that. I have not had any discussions about that. This is the first one I'm doing, so.
I understand. And I know it's hard to get election workers, so I think we're all not opposed to paying them somehow.
Okay.
And that will be, commissioners. Is there any other questions?
We would like to discuss moving the congregate meal program to a nonprofit. Is that here or is that somewhere else in this discussion?
We can definitely have this discussion. I know that there has been already a lot of discussions within the grant administration and the parks department.
Morning.
Good morning. So, yes, we are going to look at forming a committee with other nonprofits to see about moving the congregate meal grant to a nonprofit.
Okay. I wasn't aware we're the only county in the state who does it the way we do it. So,
We weren't either until just recently.
is there anyone who opposes the idea of sending this program to a nonprofit? No. Doesn't sound like it.
I
All right,
just think
so-
with the committee that you're gonna do, just look at multiple nonprofits, so where we can spread it out throughout the county, basically, or one that takes care of everybody, you know.
Right.
My request is just we maximize the service to the seniors, so, if we're able to cut some of our overhead and provide more meals and services, and that's, I think, a win-win.
Yeah, and just like with our social services, I'm all for giving them all the money we get from HGAC. We don't keep any of it, just give it all to nonprofit. They'll do a better job than we'll ever do.
And Commissioner, to your point, we did work with parks a lot, so we can maximize the number of meals that we can serve to the seniors. So that was at the top priority.
Yeah.
Another thing about, if we're losing some of our employees because of the way we're doing things, HR is more than happy to work with everybody to locate a job, basically. So nobody can really lose a job, hopefully.
And I think, I want to echo that the goal is to maximize our benefits to our seniors as well. And I think that this gives us an opportunity to do that.
Anything else on budget?
Nothing else?
All right, we'll move to the next item, discussion of quarter 2 retirement plan update presented by Dan Pease, submitted by Lee. Asking you shall receive.
Back there.
All good?
Go.
Yes, sir. I want to thank you all for the time this morning. I'll keep it very brief. Just a couple of administrative items. We have our first term of our contract with Voya expiring at the end of this year. We are working with HR and purchasing to go through those contract renegotiations. Then we will be issuing a competitive bid RFP. So expect some more updates around that.
Okay.
I did want to provide some highlights around the WealthSpire Financial Wellness Program, we will be on site September 15th and 16th for those in-person on-site meetings with employees. There is included in the full report an estate planning starter kit, so that's available for employees if they do want to take a look at that. We also have our planned document restatement as part of the legislation and new regulations as part of Secure Act 2.0, and the CARES Act. We'll have to go through that planned document restatement, again, working with HR to get that updated and processed in a timely fashion. I do want to highlight a couple of items as it relates to our public sector retirement dues and views, most specifically highlighting why it's important for employees to know they can stay in the plan post-retirement. There's no compelling reason to take the money and roll it outside of the county's retirement plan. You all have worked so hard to provide a low-cost, efficient retirement plan with best-in-class investments. That's a great option for them to stay here, and they still get access to Voya and the WellSpire Financial Wellness team. Also, some considerations before you retire. This will be part of those talking points as part of the financial wellness program. But just highlighting that income strategy before you go into retirement, consider pension, your outside savings, your deferred compensation, Social Security replacement plan. Also evaluating that healthcare and insurance needs, just highlighting anything that you may have of importance, whether it's spouse or beneficiaries or dependents as you get ready for that. And then, of course, defining your retirement lifestyle, what that looks like, and then, of course, budgeting for what those specific items will look like. So getting right into the quarterly market update, I do want to highlight the largest piece of feedback that we get from committees as well as council is around why the market continues to move higher and higher in the face of all the headline risk, inflation, Iran conflict, et cetera. And it's really driven by that strong earnings backdrop. You can see for the last year, there was a 30% quarter-over-quarter performance in those earnings. So the fundamentals are providing the support for where the valuations are. Even though they do that stretch, you can see that 30% growth for that year over year for Q1, and it doesn't look to stop anytime soon. As you look out to Q2, Q3, and Q4 the rest of this year, companies are reporting historic earnings and profitability and revenue, and their forward projections are looking very positive. We're also on the right-hand side. This is the Economic City Surprise Index. In essence, you get a number of economists that come together and they put out the projections in regards to what the economy is going to do here locally based on inflation, Federal Reserve, consumer spending, et cetera. And since July of 2025, it's been a tremendous surprise to the upside. So all things look very good. The macro backdrop is very positive, as does the market backdrop. Wanted to briefly highlight the oil prices and inflation expectations year to date. Really just wanted to note in the bottom right-hand corner, as we have the new Federal Reserve Chairman Kevin Warsh and the expectation that we will have the Fed raise rates at least once into the end of the year, you are seeing a divergence between oil and inflation. And the big breakdown here, of course, is where the Federal Reserve expects inflation to go and where we're seeing oil prices go. Of course, last night, notwithstanding, we have seen oil come off significantly from those highs from the first quarter, where it was $125 per barrel. Now we're right around $90 per barrel. Do want to highlight briefly the asset class returns. All news positive here. Look across the board, fixed income on the left-hand side in that dark blue. In the center, U.S. equities as well as international and emerging equities, all positive across the board. The only sector that was down for the quarter in that circle, of course, is commodities, with oil and gas coming down significantly since the first quarter. You also had precious metals, specifically gold and silver, coming well off their highs after the first of the year. One thing I do want to highlight is of concern is the U.S. Treasury yield curve. We've talked the last few quarters around the higher for longer environment in which the market is pricing in the fact that we're going to remain in a higher interest rate environment. That's what the market has been telling us. You see that top line where it says 4.44, that's what the rates were for the 10-year Treasury as of June 30th. This morning they jumped up to 4.76. That's kind of the concerning line in the sand is at 5%. If and when the 10-year Treasury jumps up to that 5% number, you do tend to see equity investors move out of equities and over to fixed income. That fixed income at 5% for U.S. Treasury is what's considered a risk-free rate of return. So investors can find that pretty appealing if that rate jumps up there. On the right-hand side, corporate credit spreads. Just the takeaway here is that we are at historical lows as it relates to corporate credit spreads. And I mentioned earlier that the macro backdrop looks very good. The fundamentals in the market backdrop look really good. But the corporate credit spreads tend to be a great leading indicator as to the risk being priced into the overall market. And as such, we don't currently see much risk priced in at all as it relates to those corporate credit spreads. So if we start to see those diverge, like we did during the Iran conflict earlier this year, or back during the tariffs that we had in 2025, the bear market in 2022, or of course COVID, those would be items of concern to keep an eye out for. And then last but not least, under the equity update, just a pretty significant rotation out of large cap growth into small cap growth. You can see for U.S. equities, small cap has outperformed by a pretty wide margin. But across international and emerging markets, large cap growth has outperformed pretty handily. I did want to highlight on the far right-hand side, South Korea up 87.6%. That is not a typo. That market is heavily concentrated in the memory market. Think of SK Hynix or SanDisk or Micron. Those names are up 500, 600, or even 1,000% over the last year. That's really what's been perpetuating that South Korean market higher and higher.
Are feeding the AI still?
Yes, sir, directly tied to the AI theme and the AI trade. Getting right into the investment lineup, all things look really good. I do want to highlight just briefly a couple of takeaways that we will discuss as part of that upcoming RFP. One of the areas that we'll consider as part of the issuance is the updated investment lineup. We're currently in that retirement track conservative target age series. That would be what's considered the default when somebody enrolls in the 457B plan. That's based on their age of birth and projected retirement age of 65. That would be the one that we would look at replacing if we decide to change record keepers. The rest of the lineup does look really good. I know I want to keep it abbreviated in terms of commentary, but your employees do have access to what I would consider the best of both worlds. They have that stable value fund. So for anyone that is risk averse, they have that stable value fund, which is paying right at 3.5%. That's another item of consideration as part of the RFP. The current rate for stable value funds is pushing around 4%. So that would be the goal, is to push that rate higher if and when we do renew that contract with the potential record keeper. You also have the money market account available to employees as well. And that's that Vanguard Cash Reserve Federal Money Market. The current 7-day SEC yield on that is 3.86. So employees really do have the best of both worlds if they want to be risk off. Otherwise, they have a number of really good investment options across the board in those variable lineups. We do have 2 funds on the watch list. So as part of our investment policy statement that we outlined, we do review these funds. These 2 are up for removal, and as part of the RFP, we would designate 2 replacement funds to replace those 2 funds as part of that consideration. So we always want to provide our employees with best-in-class investments at the most efficient price, and those 2 are currently on watch list and are not meeting the standards that we would expect as part of that investment policy statement. So that's all I wanted to provide in terms of an update, unless you all had any specific questions.
When will decisions be made about those 2 that are on the watch list?
We're going to have a discussion immediately following this meeting, and so we'll have some recommendations around those 2 funds.
Okay.
What are we looking for in the RFP? Fees that they're charging us, or?
It's going to be a combination of fees and the level of service. I think Rebecca can share more details in regards to the level of service that she's receiving versus the level of service that we expect based on the contract and the planned service guarantees that are outlined in your current agreement. We would expect FOIA or the potential record keeper to be on site in person at least once per month. They also need to respond to county staff within 24 to 40 hours, whether it's a phone call or an email or otherwise. That's our expectation, that they respond in a timely fashion to the administration. Same thing for participants. If a participant calls in, they need to respond within 30 seconds.
So service and fees.
Yes, sir.
And
Rebecca,
so,
oh, go ahead.
yeah, so we're looking at what, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year? What's the contract length for?
It's typically a 5-year contract is the recommendation with 2 1-year renewals.
I didn't prepare you for this, but can you give us just general feedback that you get from employees with respect to their satisfaction with our retirement program?
We've had general satisfaction since we changed plans. Change is hard. When we first moved to the change, there was lots of concerned employees, but I think now that they see the return on their investments and their money, we get very little feedback, positive or negative.
Okay.
Speaking with Matt, our customer service has declined over the last years. Sometimes it's taken 2 weeks for them to answer general questions that are coming in. I've called Matt in and he's worked with them on the level of customer service. I think that maybe they have more work loaded on the customer service rep than she can handle. Maybe they need to hire someone, I'm not sure what would fix that, but that is issues we're having.
Okay. Anything else? Very good, thank you. Thank you. That brings us to our last item, discuss employee benefit options for 2027 plan year, presented by Human Resources.
Good morning.
Yes.
All right, good morning. My name is Tim Brown. I'm consulting with Alliant here to give you an update on the health plan, and we'll run through the presentation. I will jump around a little bit just to give you kind of the highlights, but of course I can answer any additional questions. So overall, the health plan performance year to date is expected, and we'll jump into it later in the presentation, expected to finish the year about 3.8% up year over year. I think what we want to drive home in this particular slide is that the budget has not been touched in several years. So the loss ratio that you're seeing, while it looks like it's larger at the 100% loss ratio being the amount you budget against how much you pay out on the county side, has been over 100%. That's because historically it has not moved, but of course there's been inflation in the health and pharmacy space. And so as a result, we wanted to discuss, moving the budget up into an area where it is actually more realistic with how claims and costs are coming in. One of the main reasons you would consider doing that is when somebody leaves the county, whether they're terminated or leave on their own, there's something called COBRA that they're offered, and that rate is much, much lower than what you should expect to actually outlay. So that's one of the primary reasons, is that the budget itself is far below where you have historically performed. Not necessarily saying that the health plan itself is performing poorly. One of the main things from a loss ratio perspective is you are seeing that climb up. 2025 had a little bit higher large claims than we expected, and we're seeing those actually trickle down a bit in 2026. And so one of the things that we recommend is considering increasing the budget into an area that's just more realistic with where the plan has historically performed. Either way, the county has been coming out of pocket for those expenses, so it's just a matter of putting it in the frontline budget, and primarily so that the COBRA rate, or the rate that employees see when they leave, is more reflective of the actual cost. I'll jump to kind of where the plans are year over year. So from a per head perspective, or if you see PEPM, that's our way of saying per head per month. You're seeing about a 15% year over year, rolling 12, which means if you compare the most recent 12 months to the prior 12 months. But actually, we think that 2026 versus 2025 is only going to be an uptick of about 3.8%, which is a positive outcome. We're also doing things aggressively to manage those costs, like we're in the middle of an RFP right now, which will be coming back to you with the results of where we're aggressively pushing down vendor costs, as well as evaluating to make sure you're with the correct medical and PBM partner. The top categories we're seeing, 2025, we saw a large uptick in neoplasms, which is cancer claimants. Fortunately, we've seen that come down, some really large expenses, and also from the members where the result are no longer on the plan. We are seeing an uptick in circulatory, which is more metabolic health and diabetics. There is an expense increase in that. A lot of that is tied to, there are some innovative medications that have come out to really help combat those in the GLP-1 categories, which the county's been generously helping employees get access to. And so we think over time that will really make a big difference. But in the front end, you do have to kind of invest those costs for the medications in order to see the long-term impacts. But we've heard some great stories coming back from that program. And then, finally on musculoskeletal, those are the orthopedics. So if people having back issues, we are seeing a rise across the country in that expense. So that is up a bit year over year. In terms of high-cost claimants, we did see an uptick of the most recent 12 months versus the prior 12 months, but we actually have seen an improvement there in the most recent plan year. So if you just think of the 2026 plan year, we are seeing a lower number of large claimants, and some really large claimants that were from the 25 plan year have resolved, which is positive outcomes as well. Top drugs on the plan, we mentioned the GLP-1s, that's the Mounjaro and Ozempic. Those are the top, those are two of the larger ones. The other ones on here, Skyrizi, Taltz, and Humira, are mostly being utilized to treat plaque psoriasis, but those are high-cost medications, and we see those across our entire local business, but those are the top medications that we're seeing. We always like to call out, you do cover, have retiree coverage pre-65, so pre-Medicare eligibility. You're typically always going to see a much higher cost for those members versus the ones that are active and maybe a bit younger. That reflects in this data as well. You're seeing about $1,000 a month of additional cost for those pre-65 retirees that you cover on the plan. So that's not unusual from what we see in other counties we work with or municipalities, but it is just a common thing that, you know, those pre-65 retirees are driving a little bit higher cost than the active employees on the plan. They represent about 14% of the total employees on the plan, so not enormous. Getting into the healthcare projections, so this is where you set your budget year over year, and this is really what we wanted to talk a bit more about. As I mentioned, we think we'll finish the year about 3.8% in actual year over year real spend in the county, but you'll see that the funding there, that darker shade, hasn't really been adjusted. So one of the proposals is to move that into more of the, where we think the plan will actually perform. Medical trend this year is right at the 10% threshold when you combine medical and pharmacy expenses. So the expectation is that you'll perform in that average trend category. The consideration, is whether or not you move that budget up into an area where we anticipate you will run. So we've provided the analysis, and that would be, of course, a decision for you all to make. But the projection is a 10% increase in 2027, which is on par with market. So, again, these are more detailed, but they do dive into the actual increase you need. So just to go back briefly, the budget will feel like it would need to increase substantially, but the cost to the county will actually not. So in other words, you have a budget set right now, but you're actually paying that overage year over year and have been. So the proposal is just that you put that in the actual health plan budget versus taking it out of additional funding. And one of the key things that we do think will help significantly with this is we are in the process of the RP. We just finished our best and final round, so we are getting positive results from that. We look at, when we do that, not only who's got the best deals with the different healthcare providers in town, since you're a self-insured plan, but also how can we stay in front of this escalating pharmacy expense. So we're looking aggressively at different pharmacy benefit managers that could lower specialty costs, as well as provide bigger pharmacy rebates back to the county, which at the end of the day just lowers the net cost you pay. And so we've gone out to the market and gotten a really strong response. So you'll see there's 6 different vendors on here actively trying to win your business, and we plan to bring those results back in the near future with what we found, but we've seen good early results.
Is that not the health district program that we're setting up for the specialty drugs?
That's a 340B specialty pharmacy program. That's separate from this.
Oh, okay.
We are finding challenges finding a pharmacy vendor that is willing to honor that agreement that we have with this 340B program, but the client's still working through those issues.
Part of our analysis will be to look at the savings that you've achieved through that program compared to kind of a market standard approach and let you all make the decision of if that additional program still drives the level of savings and value that you wanted when you originally put it in. If it hasn't, we can pivot, but if it has, we can double down on what we're doing.
Okay.
And then we always like to show benchmarking. So we looked at your peer groups in the area. One of the things that jumped out at us is especially in the high deductible category, that's a really competitive plan, especially when it's what you charge for family coverage. So we'd like to see that against your peer groups. You also have a nice mix of plan options. So you have the 2 PPO options and the 1 high deductible option. Really helps a multi-generational workforce have choice whenever they look at which health plan they want. So we were just continuing to look at that. So each year we'll benchmark your plans against your peer groups there.
Can you go back?
Yep, sure.
The benefits pool, what is that?
So some groups work with you know, like a TML has a benefits pool that's, you know, for example, League Cities and that. So if they're in a program like that, we just call that out, whereas you all, you know, procure directly from the vendors. So we just like to call that out whenever that's the case. And as you can see, League City is the only one that actually participates in a benefits pool. All of the other peer groups just go straight to the vendor like you. And then just in terms of plan mix, you know, 3 plans is a nice mix. We see that several others offer the same or less, but in general, at the end of the day, we've seen your costs right at median or improved. So when you look at all of the plans, which this is a bit of a busy slide, but it's got all of the plans right next to each other, you'll see that overall you have a competitive benefit offer, which is what we've heard from the HR team as well. But we always want to make sure we're staying at or above in front of kind of where your peer groups are located. I will say in general, it's been a really challenging renewal year from what we've seen in our book of business. So the 10% increase, you know, year-over-year cost is actually competitive from what we've seen some others facing right now with how it's, you know, we've seen a lot of escalation in medical expenses and on the pharmacy side.
Do anything with the Trump RX accounts or anything, because that's saved money. I mean, it's supposed to lower $700 million in lower costs, and so do you all go through that system at all to try to save on some of these medications?
Yeah, we've definitely evaluated a lot of the direct-to-consumer type options, like the Trump RX account options, and, you know, people have heard of Mark Cuban's Cost Plus as well. So we're constantly figuring out how does that cost actually stack up to what you're getting through your health plan. I think the one thing, the miss, if there is one in that program, is just that it doesn't integrate with the health plan. So if I've hit my out-of-pocket maximum already, or it doesn't go towards that. So if I pay $200 into I get it directly through a Trump discount, it doesn't count towards my out-of-pocket on the health plan. And that's where at the member level, it still hasn't quite been as aggressive. Now, anything that we can get a deeper discount that maybe the health plan doesn't cover, or is that we're definitely making sure we make members aware of those extra resources. You know, the GLP-1 coverage that you all do, it's a really nice benefit. That's probably where we've seen most groups take advantage of it, that you all are actually, you know, providing coverage for that, which is a really strong benefit.
And once we have the results from the RFP, the best and final offer, we'll present those to you guys, let you look at those and make decisions for the 2027 plan year.
I will say this is a great year to be doing an RFP though, just because costs have escalated so much that getting the opportunity to look at your contract and renegotiate it, it's you know, a really good time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, no recommendations today?
No.
Okay. All right, anything else? All right, we're at 11:10.